Hello my dear viewers. Today is April 23rd. And today I am planning two materials because in connection with Easter and in general, the activity of hostilities on the Ukrainian front has decreased. I won't say that the activity has completely fallen, it has decreased by 30%. Nevertheless, some advances of the Russian troops are already being made this morning. We will talk about them in today's evening issue, which will be dedicated to the situation at the front. And this morning I want to single out the issue of ammunition for the armed forces of Ukraine as a separate topic. This topic appeared due to the fact that yesterday the Russian media showed a video that the Russian armed forces took full control of one of the main bases, I would say, the main Ukrainian military arsenal near the city of Balakleya. We are talking about the complete taking under control of this arsenal. And the Ukrainian armed forces could not use it almost from the very beginning of hostilities because Russian troops entered the city of Balakleya back in March. Despite the fact that they were not yet able to take full control of this arsenal, the Ukrainian armed forces, for obvious reasons, could no longer use it. Why is it so important? In fact, the Balakleya warehouse is interesting because it is the main warehouse from where all the armed forces of Ukraine took, first of all, heavy artillery 152mm shells. There were a lot of things from the MLRS Grad, MLRS Smerch and MLRS Hurricane. But it was this warehouse that was the main warehouse for the supply of 152mm shells, which today is becoming one of the most important factors in the war. Because it is heavy artillery that is currently decisive in many military operations. The lack of artillery immediately affects the front line. For the past 10 days, the Ukrainian media have been reporting a shortage of heavy shells. In this regard, some operations of the Russian armed forces are much faster and easier than they would be if the Ukrainian side did not have this shortage of shells. One of the most important factors explaining the situation is the exclusion of Ukrainian armed forces from reaching this ammunition depot. The Ukrainian authorities are trying in every possible way to compensate for the shortage of shells. They borrowed these shells from all European warehouses in Eastern Europe. But the main problem is that today no one except Russia and in a very small amount of Bulgaria produces these shells. Bulgaria produces these shells for foreign wars. And the Bulgarian capacities cannot produce ammunition in the required quantity for the Ukrainian armed forces. Regardless of the fact that the Ukrainian armed forces still have a significant part of the artillery, in many places they are already experiencing a real lack of shells, which will definitely affect not only the operation in Donbas, but in general the whole situation on all fronts of the Ukrainian war. Realizing the severity of the situation, in order to solve this problem and allow the armed forces of Ukraine to continue to resist, the NATO countries decided to transfer not only their light artillery, but also heavy weapons to the territory of Ukraine. First of all, these are artillery systems. Moreover, it is systems of heavy 155mm calibers, including shells for them. At the moment, it is known that all the countries of the European Union, the USA and Canada will deliver in total. Something has already been delivered, about 200 multiple launch rocket systems and cannon artillery systems, and about 200,000 shells for them. Moreover, 200,000 shells, here we mean precisely shells of 155mm caliber, to which, now in any case, the Ukrainian armed forces will switch due to the fact that they no longer have 152mm shells and access to warehouses, where they mainly were, they also no longer have. They were taken under control by the Russian military. 200 artillery systems, is it a lot or a little? On the one hand, it seems to be not much, but on the other hand, these are still 200 artillery systems, good, high quality, modern. But this transition to new delivered systems has its negative sides. The matter is that systems of 15 different names are delivered to Ukraine today. And here it is not even so important to teach the specialists who will use it. This task is being solved quite well today at military training grounds, including those of European countries. The most important thing is that, of course, no one will create a repair base for these systems in Ukraine. Because for such a small number of trunks it simply does not make sense to create it. It turns out that these are still single-use systems. That is, having got to the front and being put out of action, they are subject to disposal since no one can repair them anywhere. The Europeans and NATO representatives are taking this step because at the moment they simply have no other way to save the Ukrainian armed forces from complete defeat in the next battle. And they actually do what they can really do. They do everything they can. If they could do more, believe me, they would do more, but they still cannot do more. This is approximately how the situation with artillery systems looks like, and the problem of deliveries of these systems, as well as shells for them from European countries, the United States of America, Canada and Australia. That's all for now on this topic. Goodbye, see you next video.